Sing the wondrous love of Jesus, sing His mercy and His grace. In the mansions bright and blessed, He'll prepare for us a place. While we walk the pilgrim pathway, clouds will overspread the sky. But when traveling days are over, not a shadow sigh. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Let us then be true and faithful, trusting, serving every day.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Hathaway. I preach at the Westside Church of Christ in Owen, Kentucky. I want to thank you for joining me today as we open up the Bible and study the Word of God. This is Verse of the Day, where we follow a reading schedule that I had put out at the beginning of the year for the congregation here at Westside, and we read a chapter a day, just trying to encourage brethren to study the Word of God every day, read a chapter. And so I try to take a verse or two or more out of that chapter to talk about every morning, and try to study the Word of God and encourage others to do the same. So today we are in Leviticus chapter 2. Leviticus chapter 2, and I want to look at verse 3 and in verse 10. And before I get into that, I do want to make the point that if you are reading from the King James translation, it will read about the meat offering here. And that might throw you off, and to the point that as I'm reading from the ESV, English Standard, it reads from the grain offering, or even as you go from the King James to the New King James or other translations. I believe the King James is the only one I saw that says meat offering. And that can throw you off and be like, why is there such a mistranslation there? And in our mindset, that's a mistranslation, because meat means meat, right, to us, and that is, it's the steak and or that bull or burnt offering that is meat. And here you got a grain offering, and grain and meat seems to be completely different things. And so looking into what commentators have said on that it wasn't necessarily a mistranslation, because it's just going back to the time frame and going back into that point in which how they use that. So the culture, the time, where this was translated at the time, that they would use that word just into the meaning of food altogether, food. And so a food sacrifice, a food offering. And so it wasn't necessarily a mistranslation for the time frame in which it was translated. But a better translation for us today would be grain offering, as you're looking into this chapter and what is being offered at this point. Just because our mindset when we read meat is going to be about the meat instead of a grain offering, and instead of a different kind of food offering. And so just a little side note there, that you can maybe look into that yourself and read about that. So I want to look at verses 3 and verse 10 here. And so verse 3 says, "But the rest of the grain offering shall be for Aaron and his sons. It is a most holy part of the Lord's food offering. But the rest of the grain offering shall be for Aaron and his sons. It is a most holy part of the Lord's food offering." And so that's verse 3 and verse 10. And the point that I wanted to bring out here, as they make this offering to God, they bring this grain offering, this food offering there in verse 10. It is an offering to the Lord. Most of it is burnt and sweet aroma unto God. And then what is left for the priest, for Aaron and his sons. And it's just a point to show that God always took care of those who were serving him. Because especially in this time point, as the Aaron and his sons, the priest, they were fully dedicated to the service of God, that they were taking care of the tabernacle, they were making the sacrifices, they didn't have a secular occupation. even as you continue to study through the Old Testament, that as they enter into the land of Canaan, and you read about how the land was divided, that the Levites didn't get a portion of the land like everybody else, where it was cut out. This is where Judah went. This is where the Benjamites went. This is where and so what the Levites end up getting was just portions of everybody's land, to the point that they would have a city in which they would be, so that they could teach others, that nation and the other nations, the other tribes of Israel. And so the same thing here. As they were working, they had to be provided for. They had to be able to eat. They had to be able to feed their family. And so this offering went to God, but then part of it was to help take care of the priest and his family, his children, his wife, and so that they were able to feed them. And so that was part of how they did it under the old law here, under this time frame, is that the grain offering, part of that grain offering, part of other meat, burnt offerings. Now, there were some offerings, and even the offerings that were for the priests themselves, when they made sin offerings for their own sins. I believe as we get to later, I believe I saw chapter 6, that they don't get to take a portion of that the full thing, full offering was burnt to the Lord, or sacrificed to the Lord. So again, looking forward to go through the book of Leviticus as we continue along. I thank you for joining me today, and I hope that everybody has a good start to their week. And if the Lord is willing, I will talk to you later.